and A5 quality, which is why me.
Okay, it's been 4 minutes and he still hasn't shown the bathroom. I'm moving on. I want to see what rich neighborhoods in Tokyo look like. How the fucking high society in Tokyo live. Let's take a look. Bro, please stop. Please stop sending, like, it's fine. You were linking, like, Conquest of Bread. Fine. But, like, now you're just, like, linking Ghosts of Mark Fisher, Hauntology, Lost Futures and Depression by Epoch Philosophy. A 22-minute video. That does not sound like fun to me.
Hello world. In a previous video, I showed what a typical Tokyo neighborhood looks like. But recently, I wondered what I'd find if I visited some of the wealthier areas. And where do the rich even live? Well, I'd say it's mostly on the west side, the Yamanote side. It's geographically the upper areas of Tokyo and where you would traditionally find the upper class. The east side is called Shitamachi, which conveniently is geographically lower and, you guessed it, where you would traditionally find the lower class. This is where my wife's family comes from and where we own a home. For the purposes of this video, I went to the west and largely avoided the skyscrapers, as they're honestly not as fun to look at from the ground. Instead, I picked pockets of land that mainly had single-family housing, and a couple areas that had disproportionately large
Japanese single-family housing? Jesus Christ.
One of the best examples.
I assume you have to be, like, insanely caked to have single-family housing on a fucking island where, like, you know, population density is so severely high. Like, I'm thinking, like, oof. It's like having single-family housing in New York. You know what I mean?
Examples of this is Dennen Chofu. It's based on the Garden City movement created by Ebenezer Howard, a British urban planner. The man who is said to be the father of Japanese capitalism was inspired to try the concept in Tokyo, so he purchased and developed Dennen Chofu in 1907.
Guys, I'm talking about, oh my God. The video is about rich neighborhoods in Tokyo. I'm clearly talking about having single-family housing in Tokyo. No, I'm not talking about bumfuck like Japanese forest areas where people live in homes, okay? Why do you have to jump down my goddamn throat, dude?
While garden cities were developed with the ideal of having a classless society, in reality what happened was that they became rather exclusive.
I said island with areas of high population density. Oh my God, you're so annoying. Everyone in the chat is like, actually, I'm an otaku.
Areas for the wealthy. Dennen Chofu is no exception. And just a note, I'm specifically talking about the Sanchome area located in Ota Ward. It's easy to see from the sky due to its distinctive radial pattern. In Dennen Chofu, they have minimum lot sizes, which partially explains why you'll see larger homes than normal. Plots need to be at least 165 square meters, and buildings no taller than 9 meters. Apartments cannot be built, nor can row houses with more than 4 units. While there's a minimum plot size, in reality, most plots tend to be larger. One reason for this is if you're sitting on a plot of land that is 300 square meters, you wouldn't be able to split it into 2, since both halves would only be 150 square meters. In fact, after manually measuring out a few of the areas, I feel safe in saying that on average, the lots are double the minimum lot size. Interestingly, if you look at land values for Dennen Chofu, they don't seem too high, especially considering neighboring areas. However, due to the minimum lot sizes, even the smallest property starts at 130 million yen, which is about $1 million US given current exchange rates. Keep in mind,
that is not that expensive. What the fuck? No, that's like not, no, chat. I don't think you guys understand. God, America is the fucking worst. I swear to God. That's so fucking annoying, dude. Dude, what the fuck? Dude, are you kidding me? Are you joking? Motherfuckers in Ohio pay more for the land sometimes, man. Just for the land alone? That's like LA prices.
Find that this is the starting cost just to get the bare minimum of land without any buildings. So you basically have to be a millionaire to own a house here, just like in Vancouver and Toronto now. Neighborhoods outside of Danan-Chofu allow for much smaller lot sizes and have less restrictions, which makes the land more valuable. A great example is Jiyugaoka, which is one train station north. This lot is selling for 63 million yen, which is about $500,000 US. It's only 62 square meters, which is much smaller than the minimum of 165 in Danan-Chofu, but the land per square meter is worth 27% more. So perhaps this is counterintuitive to some, but cramming more residents into an area makes the land more valuable. On top of minimum lot sizes, there are also rules that the buildings have to be harmonious with their surroundings. There are limits on the size of walls and the types of construction materials used. While I don't think
Yo, not gonna lie, it's still gross. This is gross. Like, no matter what happens, it still turns into like fucking American housing no matter where you go. What the fuck? These motherfuckers built American McMansions in the middle of fucking Tokyo. That's crazy, okay? It is so AmeriCorps, dude. This is the most AmeriCorps ass shit I've seen. Oh my lord.
I think these rules make houses in Danan-Chofu homogeneous by any means. They're probably not as out there in terms of architectural design as you'll find in other neighborhoods with less restrictions. And one last point about neighborhood rules. Danan-Chofu has a volunteer neighborhood association who, in addition to the city, also have their own rules around how the properties should look and the proper way to enjoy your property, like not airing out your clean laundry where people from the street can see. However, unlike homeowner associations in the United States, these rules are not enforceable by law and thus are suggestions that they strongly suggest you follow, like really strongly suggest, as in Yakuza might be showing up at your place if you don't. No, I joke, but if you live in the area, there will be huge pressure to conform to the neighborhood standards. While Danan-Chofu has special laws to preserve the character of the neighborhood, in a place like Shirokane, you can easily turn a corner and find yourself in a neighborhood that's like any other you'd find around Tokyo. For example, you probably didn't even notice that the last shots were from Edogawa-ku, a working-class neighborhood in Tokyo. It's basically indistinguishable from some streets in Shirokane. And now, so we're clear, these shots are from Shirokane. You'll find a mix of people with modest homes who have held onto them for decades, mixed with relative newcomers who have paid a premium price for the land and have mostly built custom homes. I was somewhat taken aback to see that some homes were essentially the same kind of cookie-cutter ones that you'd find in the less wealthy parts of Tokyo.
Bro, imagine having a fucking Maserati in Japan. What the fuck? Like, that's wild to me. Like, where are you driving, homie? Where is the car going? Like, what? Why? It's not even a good car either. It's like fucking dog shit. It's like when you purchase, you want to purchase something that's like expensive sounding, that's like not even, you know what I mean? That's the same price as like a fucking stable American US price, like Toyota truck. You know what I mean? SUV.
The only difference is that the home in the rich areas could cost double or even 5 times more of the price because of land values. Basically, anyone can build anything anywhere, and you can build on really small lots of land. This will result in really big homes next to small ones, as well as oddly shaped and placed homes, like this one sandwiched between a park and a road. And if you want to know more about zoning, see my Why Japan Looks the Way It Does video. Shirokane is home to the main campus of Meiji Gakuin University. Nearby, you'll find residents living in towers. I was curious about this old wooden manor up these stone steps and found out that while this was the home of a wealthy stock trader, it's now owned by Mitsubishi Electric and is a National Historic Site. This tracks, as I don't think you'll find many people living in such large old properties like this in Tokyo. Another interesting find in Shirokane was this big bunker of a building. Okay, for these homes, I need you all to help me out. When I tried to search for the names of buildings that look like
This is like, all of these houses look like California, like Hollywood Hills McMansions that they build with like a Japanese aesthetic in mind. You know what I mean? Like these are identical. It's like half brutalist, half like Japanese aesthetic, which is pretty much like It's like most of the fucking Los Angeles Hollywood Hills McMansions.
Like this, the photos that seemed most similar were labeled brutalist. Other searches put forth the names of modernist or contemporary. I realize I might be mixing up the styles that I'm showing, but overall, what is the main style of these concrete buildings?
I really thought that they would have like sick palatial estates. You know what I mean? I literally thought that like these motherfuckers would be living in like what the Shogun would be living in. You know what I mean? Disappointing. I'm not even kidding.
I feel the biggest telltale sign of a wealthy family is the steps they take for privacy. There are often walls or vegetation that prevent lurking eyes from seeing in.
This is also very, this is Los Angeles, most American big cities.
The cars will also frequently be fenced in or completely shielded within a garage. Yet you'll still see things like this Maserati that's relatively unprotected or this Lambo that's lounging around. You also see a lot of security cameras. It's very common to spy on the stickers of security companies attached to the buildings. Despite all the measures put in place to protect privacy, luckily for us, they don't stop planes and satellites. Looking at Google Maps satellite view versus street view will give you a vastly different sense of the area. Some properties will be nothing flashy from the street, but if you look at the satellite view, you can see that the size of this property is many times the size of its neighbors. Fortunately, this is Mizoe Art Gallery, so we have some fantastic 360 views of the interior. It was literally and figuratively eye-opening to get a look at these properties from Google Earth. One assumption I had was that there weren't many outdoor pools. With the Google Earth view, I found my suspicions correct. I did find this one though that not only had a pool, but a mini soccer field. Although truth be told, it's a very tiny soccer field that's not much bigger than the 6-yard goal area of a regular pitch. Over here, these houses look nice from the street, but it was hard to tell if they were the same house or not. But from above, it does look like they are two separate households, and this one has some very large
generic
windows.
name too.
And I think that's what can be deceptive
Couch
about a lot of Japanese properties. From the street, it may appear that architects hate windows, but from inside, you can see that this property certainly enjoys a lot of sun. Over here was the property I was most curious about. The walls were quite high on all sides, and it had this glass front on the corner of the street. But from Google Earth view, it looks like a pit? Google Satellite tells me there's a lot of green.
I'm kind of sad. I wish he like was allowed to go into one of these fucking homes. I wanted to see it.
Another area I visited was Seijo Gakuen. The area is named for the prestigious private educational institution that has facilities from kindergarten to university. Something I noticed just outside the train station was that there's a huge bike parking lot. I know Seijo Gakuen is close by, but it's so close that it's doubtful that students would be parking bikes here.
Yeah, you can't see the bathrooms from Google Earth. You're right, exactly. Paolo would never allow that to happen.
Instead, it's most likely that it's used by residents commuting by train. And speaking of bikes, they have a regular old bike shop nearby as well. The point I'm trying to make is that in all the wealthy areas I visited, there was high usage of one's own feet, bikes, and public transportation. Something that stood out to me with this neighborhood was the number of tree-lined streets. The main thoroughfare is covered in ginkgo trees, but I was delighted to see that many small side streets have cherry trees lining them even though they have no official sidewalks. And on the subject of trees, we came across this property that was absolutely shrouded in them. It looks like a ryokan, a traditional Japanese hotel that you would stay at in the countryside, except it's right in the middle of a
That's what I'm talking about. Like, why the fuck wouldn't you build some shit like this?
residential area. It takes up the same space that 8 homes could.
Oh.
Seijo Gakuen, like Dennen Chofu, also has a neighborhood association with their suggested rules. I guess this resident didn't get the memo. Even though it's a wealthy area, I saw instances of very basic housing. I found bachelor places that were renting for 58,000 yen and 85,000 yen, which is 450 to 650 US dollars.
What the fuck?
Another thing that intrigued me was that I found vending machines and parking lots dotted throughout. You'd figure that a neighborhood who wants to preserve their character wouldn't want vending machines, but you'd be wrong. I can say the same for parking lots, but they're a necessity since there's no on-street parking and people need to park somewhere.
Oh, it's gross. It's so gross. This literally is showing, dude, this is straight up showing me that in Japan, rich neighborhoods are like America light and there's no reason to live in them. Every other aspect of Tokyo is like completely opposed to this kind of existence. You know what I mean? It's like walking, biking, taking public transit, and then boom, you fucking go in here and it's like, here's some parking lots and American-looking McMansions. Even though it is interesting because like, notice how they still have vending machines, and he even brought it up. I think like they still and mixed income housing still, even in a neighborhood like this. I feel like there's still a little bit of that, which doesn't exist in which like purposely would never happen in America if a neighborhood was this unique, like uniquely exclusionary.
And I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised to see a community garden, which is a common sight on the east side of Tokyo. I was actually walking around the neighborhood with my Japanese teacher, so I thought I'd ask a few basic questions. What kind of people live here?
Rich people.
Rich people.
お金持ち。
So if you're in a rich area, what is this place called?
高級住宅街。
もう一回お願いします。
高級住宅街。高い。
Ah, okay. I know. Okay.
Yeah.
So like kanji takai, ko.
Q.
Q
is like a class.
Oh, right. Okay. The class, right.
住宅。
Like housing.
Yeah, housing.
Guy. Okay. Oh, by the way, Yamamoto Sensei was telling me that she has a few spots available for new learners.
Right. Yeah. I'm teaching Japanese on Nihongo Pro. So if you are interested in learning Japanese online, please check the website.
I highly recommend her. After Yamamoto Sensei and I parted ways, I headed to Shoto in Shibuya, which is only a 10-minute walk from Shibuya Crossing, famous for being one of the busiest.
You will never be Japanese. You will never find the love of your life in Japan who looks like this and is a cutie pie Japanese girl. You will never be the protagonist in an anime. You will never have superpowers that allow you to overcome your greatest tribulations. You'll always be a loser. Stop! Moon, no, don't say it.
Pedestrian crossings in the world. That's why I was caught off guard by the lack of people on some of the streets. Where did they all go? I think the simple answer is that since the houses were so huge, the residence per block is very low, and thus I didn't see many people out and about. But when I moved only a few blocks over, I once again got the hustle and bustle of Shibuya. Notable things I saw in the area included this tall wall. What on earth was behind it, I wondered. Google Earth was once again able to satisfy my curiosity and showed me that it's basically a very large home. Continuing to walk around the neighborhood, I came across this residence, which instead of building a wall around for privacy, went with the fortress strategy. The building was the wall. With Google Earth View, I was able to see that they did have an inner courtyard with some greenery, which was a relief. I was really worried that the poor souls living inside weren't getting enough light. Again, another block and another long stretch of wall. Judging by the size of nearby apartment buildings, you could easily house 20 families in the compound. A true Tokyo mansion. I then set off to see what parks were like in this wealthy area. Apparently, you get artistic bathrooms like this. I liked this little park, but I have to say, beyond the interesting bathrooms, it didn't seem drastically different from the variety of parks.
Show us the inside, bro.
Tokyo. You may have been wondering what kind of shops you find in wealthy areas. In many places, I have to admit that I didn't find anything too posh, unless you consider Platinum Don Quixote fancy. I did find KFC in Danen Shofu and Burger King in Seijo Gakuen. There will be fancier chain shops that you'll only find in wealthier areas, like the grocery store Seijo Ishii or the convenience store Natural Lawson. On the east side, we only get regular Lawson, or even cheaper, Lawson Store 100, where many items are around 100 yen. In the wealthy areas, you will still find the regular chain shops, like Dotoru, Mossburger, and Starbucks. There was this fancy patisserie called Seijo Alps, and I was actually surprised to see that the prices were on par with quality patisseries I frequent in the East, and basically similar pricing to Starbucks, but obviously much tastier. Though, on a whole, I'd say prices would generally be 10 to 20% more expensive for equivalent quality goods from independent places, but this makes sense given the land prices. If you really want expensive goods,
No, he said this guy is saying they have fancy stores like fucking Dollar General. No, Dollar General Plus and Dollar General Natural. Very different.
To visit high-end commercial areas, and there are none more premium than Ginza. It has the highest land prices in all of Japan. It also has the flashiest architecture and window displays. A pleasant feature of the main strip is that they close down the streets to motor vehicles on weekends and holidays from noon until sunset. It's a great chance to walk around and really enjoy the sights of Ginza. It's funny to see some don't realize this is happening, and they sit waiting at the traffic light even though it's a completely pedestrian zone. And close to Ginza is Chiyoda, where the wealthiest home of them all is located, the Tokyo Imperial Palace. It's where the Emperor of Japan hangs out.
My house. That's where I live.
When he was the crown prince, he used to chill at Akasaka Palace. But since he's become emperor, it's now acting as one of 2 state guest houses for the government of Japan. All in all, the most distinguishing feature I could point out about wealthier homes is that they tended to have custom architecture with some daring designs. I've read that part of the reason for this can be attributed to the perceived shelf life of Japanese homes. For tax purposes, your house completely depreciates by the time it's 15 years old, meaning that on paper, the building is worth nothing, although your land still is. I won't get into why homes do in fact last more than 15 or 30 years. I have a whole video about it, but the majority of home purchases are of new homes. So there's a...
Wait, what's the reason for that? Is it because they're building with I thought wood was like super reliable, no? Or is it earthquakes? I don't know. I live in Iowa. Keeping up to date with codes and a cultural dislike for living in someone else's old home? Huh.
There's a practice of buying new homes expecting that there will be no resale value. They're considered depreciating assets like cars, and thus people are inclined to get more creative with their designs.
Ew. None of this is creative. It's nasty. This is... ew. God, I know the Japanese are like Ameribus, but this is when it goes wrong. You know what I mean?
This is also combined with the fact that homes in most areas don't have to conform to arbitrary beauty standards, meaning architects can push the limits of what's considered good taste.
Yeah, they shouldn't, man. They actually should not have pushed the limits on it. It's so... Ugh, it's so whack. It's like... Okay. Some people in the UK might get mad at me for this take, but at least when you go to London, where, you know, prior stables have been converted into like single family housing, like at least there's a uniformity, and that still absolutely makes the city look more beautiful. Hasan Pro Hoa, 100%, dude. Dude. Fuck the homeowners association. I personally believe that like the government should absolutely tell you exactly what the best building practices are and maintain some level of conformity. Yes. Yeah. What, you kidding me, dude? I'm absolutely an advocate for that.
I mean, these are all homes in Dainchofu, which is one of the few areas in Tokyo that has rules about homes being harmonious with their...
Total conformity is gross in housing. You are so wrong. You've never been to a fucking European city if you have this take. This is your worst take. Literally look at Paris, look at London, look at Barcelona, look at all of these other places where they have like a lot of serious codes. It's straight up better. I mean, Barcelona's in an entirely different league of its own because like the architecture itself is like also considered art.
surroundings. Despite this, there's quite a variety in design. The other thing that struck me about the wealthy areas is that I found a lot of the streets seemed otherwise normal. And there were a lot of normal-looking homes between the richer-looking ones. From what I gather, in Tokyo and in most of Japan, there aren't large concentrations of wealth in well-established neighborhoods like you might find in the UK or even the US. With Japan's long history, this might seem hard to understand, but it makes sense taking a quick look at events that happened in the past 150 years. In the Edo period, power and land were concentrated with the daimyo, who were like regional governors that held large parcels of land. With the Meiji Restoration that started in 1868, they were made to submit their domains to the new government/emperor, so the only big landholder became the emperor/Japanese government. This was the start of industrialization, and large conglomerates, called zaibatsu, formed and started accumulating massive amounts of wealth. After World War II, the US took control over the governance of Japan. This is when they instituted a high income and inheritance.
When you say uniformity to Americans who have never left Indiana, uniformity to them means Stepford suburb shit? Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about.
Tax rate. This was to ensure that an enormous concentration of wealth would never end up in the hands of a few wealthy families again. In 2015, the current governor of Tokyo, Yuriko Koike, remarked, "Japan has a high income tax rate for the rich, 45%, and the inheritance tax rate recently was raised to 55%. This makes it difficult to accumulate capital over generations. As a result..."
That's fire. Brother, that ain't freedom, okay? How dare you? Are you fucking kidding me? How fucking dare you, brother? You better stop that now. You better stop that now. What the fuck do you mean? I need to pass down all my wealth to my fail sons.
Result, Japan's richest families typically lose their wealth within 3 generations. Koike went on to say, Japanese remain sensitive to inequality, driving even the richest to avoid ostentatious displays of wealth. One simply does not see the profusion of mansions, yachts, and private jets typical of, say, Beverly Hills and Palm Beach. If you Google Tokyo mansions and compare the results to Beverly Hills mansions or Palm Beach mansions, you get an idea of what she's talking about. If you want flash, you're better off looking, not at homes, but the commercial district of Ginza, like we did. If you combine this with the fact that due to natural disasters,
Hasan mansion, my mansion is closer to a Japanese mansion than it is to the mansions that they're fucking showing, my friend. The price tag of my home is high, not necessarily because of like how gigantic it is, but because of its location. When you buy a house in Los Angeles, you know, that just comes along with that. I was going to say, yeah, they don't fuck with like ostentatious displays of wealth, but notice how in their personal consumption, you do see that. Like when they buy clothes or nice things that they do care about. Just saying, remember that whenever motherfuckers are like, Hasan, you bought a fucking fat house. You bought a fucking nice car. You buy expensive clothes.
Like the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 and the firebombing of Tokyo in 1945, there are few grand residences that are over 100 years old in the area. Even the Imperial Palace was partially rebuilt after it burned to the ground during the war.
Okay, 10K short guy.
And perhaps another factor that has prevented the creation of wealthy communities is that gated communities are not a thing in Japan. The Building Standards Act stipulates that residential areas must connect to a public road and therefore forbids construction of gated communities. However, in terms of security, the apartments with automatic locks that are increasing in urban areas are like gated communities that grew vertically. So the most exclusive areas may in fact be residential skyscrapers, which are like vertical gated communities. Of course, emanating from the east side, the Shitamachi side, I don't for a second pretend to know about the wealthy. So please, feel free to correct me in the comments. And while the credits roll for my Patreon supporters, thank you so much, I thought I'd show a few more of the interesting homes I happened across.
Top mansion tour v Japanese mansion house tour. We should return Japan to the samurai era with loyalty and honor and status. Okay. Here, I want to see things that foreigners shouldn't do in Japan.
そこはちょっとなんか気になる感じがあります。